I immediately put up a temporarily closed sign on my diner and headed to the apartment where my son and his wife live. The room was pitch dark, and I couldn't see well. It was chilly inside, and it seemed the heater wasn't on. I called out my 2 grandkids' names as I entered the room. "Mary, Kevin, Grandma's here." As I moved further in, I saw 2 small figures moving in the unlit living room. When I turned on the light, I saw a gaunt Mary shivering in the freezing room. Next to her, Kevin was trembling while eating a banana from Mary's hand. 4 anxious eyes stared at me. "What's going on?" "Mary, Kevin." Unable to bear it, I hugged them both tightly. Both Mary and Kevin clung to me and started crying loudly. Their tiny hands gripped my body tightly. I could only imagine how scared and lonely they must have been. Their mom collapsed and never returned from the hospital. Thinking about their feelings made my heart ache. Their dad, John, was not there. When I called to ask where he was, he laughed and said,
"We're on a family trip to Hawaii. We'll be back tomorrow."
"I see. Be safe." I hung up the phone. When he returned home later, he witnessed an unbelievable scene. "My name is Diana. I run a small diner and was busy with lunch today. This diner, tomorrow, was passed down from my husband's parents. Welcome. I'll get a table ready for you. Running the place by myself makes it hard to keep things moving. Regular customers reassure me not to worry when they see me flustered."
Take your time. No need to rush.
Those words give me a little comfort. Some regulars have been coming since my husband's parents' time, and others are new, living or working nearby. I love the bustling atmosphere when customers enjoy the food and chat. When someone says the food is delicious, I do a mental fist pump. I used to run the place with my husband. People can't feel good if they're hungry. So we make food that lifts their spirits. That was his favorite saying. We enjoyed coming up with the menu together, counting the money at the register, and rearranging the seating. It was fun to come up with various ideas and improvements. These days continued until our son, John, was in high school. But when John was in his 2nd year of high school, my husband passed away in an accident. It was a tough time, and I considered closing the diner. John was preparing for college and couldn't help with the diner. I didn't think I could manage alone. During that time, one of the regular customers saw me in town and said, "We're waiting for you." That smile gave me the strength to try running the place by myself again. "Don't worry, it'll work out somehow." I consulted with my friends and in-laws, and we scaled down the business to a manageable size. 3 months after my husband's death, Tomorrow reopened. John successfully passed his college entrance exams and got into his first choice school.
"I want to live on my own because it's far from home."
"Sure, that's okay. Let's go check out some places." I tried to accommodate John's requests as much as possible. Both my husband and I were always busy with the diner, so we didn't have much time for John when he was young. The diner was thriving, so we couldn't neglect it. Even after closing, my husband would stay to prepare for the next day. I would go home, make dinner, and spend time with John while waiting for my husband to return.
"Is Dad working again today?"
I still remember little John asking that every night. The sad look on his face is still etched in my mind. I wished we could have had family dinners together more often, but it only happened once or twice. I felt guilty for having made John feel lonely for so long. I want you to learn what you want and find your path, John. Give it your all. I told him this before he moved out for college. John just nodded slightly. He said nothing more. Even after he started living on his own, I continued running the small diner by myself. We had enough savings for his college tuition, so we didn't need scholarships. Those 4 years of his college life flew by. During that time, I kept the diner running on my own. After graduating, John got a job and started working as an adult. John, dressed in a suit and tie, squeezed into a crowded train on his way to work. Imagining that scene, I smiled to myself, thinking about how much little John had grown. He even had a girlfriend he was serious about marrying. When he introduced her to me, I was stunned. John's girlfriend, Maggie, was as beautiful as a magazine model.
Nice to meet you. I'm Maggie. I'm dating John.
Her beautiful voice and polite manner overwhelmed me. I thought she must come from a very wealthy family.
Not at all. We're just an ordinary family.
She laughed softly, looking very elegant. I wondered what part of John had attracted such a wonderful person. They were already living together, or rather, John had moved into Maggie's place.
I had no choice. My place was too noisy next door.
You had no choice, huh, John?
It's fine. I originally rented a slightly bigger place, so it works out well.
Maggie said cheerfully, coming to his rescue. Her polite language, refined manners, and bright smile. I instantly took a liking to her and found myself saying, "Thank you for taking care of John." They got married, and 3 years later, they had 2 children. The first was a girl named Mary. The second was a boy named Kevin. So, I've become a grandma now. I spoke deeply to my husband's portrait. On his birthday or any special occasion, I always put flowers. I did the same on the days my 2 grandchildren were born. Maggie still visited the diner whenever she had some free time, even after the kids were born.
Hi, Diana.
Oh, welcome, Maggie. How's work?
Since my kids were born, I switched to my job I can do from home.
Wow, it's amazing that you can do that nowadays. I looked back and forth between little Mary and Kevin with admiration. Even these little ones will grow up and eventually become independent like John. Thinking about it, children seem so mysterious, and I couldn't help but stare at them more intently. As the seasons passed, my 2 grandchildren continued to grow. As more wrinkles appeared on my face, Mary eventually started elementary school. Mary, how old are you now? One day, I asked Mary when she visited the diner.
I'm 6 now, and I'll be 7 on my next birthday.
Her response was so proper that she didn't seem like a first grader. She must take after her mom. Maggie said Mary was also great at taking care of her little brother, which was a big help.
They don't fight and get along very well.
She said this with a proud smile on her face. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, and the future looked bright, but that wasn't entirely the case. I had one concern. It was about John. He had a personality that couldn't stick with a job for long, even after getting hired. He quit the company he joined right after graduating from college in less than 6 months.
There were too many tasks, and the pay wasn't worth it.
After that, he got another job at a different company. But he quit this one as well in less than 3 months.
I can't do what I want, and I can't stand not having remote work.
You can't keep changing jobs so often. You'll never settle down.
It's not my fault. It's the bad economy.
Whenever something didn't suit him, he'd complain and quit. Seeing him like this, I shrugged my shoulders. If you're not working, you should at least help take care of Mary and Kevin.
What? No way. That's Maggie's job, not mine.
It was Maggie who was supporting the household in place of John. While talking to me, John was glued to his smartphone. I wondered what he was so engrossed in.
Oh, Mom, look at this. I'm into food blogging and post on social media.
He showed me his phone, displaying numerous photos of various dishes. There were photos of delicious-looking burgers, steaks, pizzas, and large meal sets. He talked about the number of followers and likes, but I had no idea what he was talking about. Instead of playing around like that, why don't you get a real job?
It's not playing. I'm serious. I'm aiming to be an influencer.
What's that?
Never mind, just follow me and like my posts.
I don't know how to do that.
Give me your phone, install this app, and here's how you do it.
With quick fingers, he set up an account and registered everything in no time. He also showed me which button was for like and how to navigate the app. But after he left, I still didn't understand. I can't keep up with this. I set my phone aside and focused on the bookkeeping. Occasionally, when I had video calls with Maggie, I found out she was also asked to follow John's social media. There are more important things close by that need attention than social media. I was happier seeing Mary and Kevin on video calls than anything on social media. John once helped out at my diner for a short while, right after he lost his job. He thought it seemed easier than office work. No job is easy, but I was grateful for the help. I've heard that fewer children are taking over their parents' businesses these days. I didn't plan to force John to take over, and I was prepared to close the diner when the time came. However, I wondered if perhaps something had changed in John's mind. I had a faint hope that he might want to take over the diner. I was delighted to have him work in the diner, guiding customers and taking orders. He got along well with the regular customers and chatted with them, which was refreshing to see. For the first week, things seemed to be off to a great start. Maybe this suits him better than office work. I was thinking that, but starting the following week, John gradually began to slack off. He barely took orders, didn't clean up, and hardly guided customers. To make matters worse, he started browsing social media in front of customers. He even asked regulars and new customers to follow him and like his posts. The next day, he didn't show up at the time he was supposed to start working. "John, where are you? Are you off today?"
I quit that job. It's harder than I thought.
After that, he stopped answering my calls, and I was back to running the diner alone. John stopped coming to the diner in less than 10 days. Since then, he focused more on social media than anything else. Meanwhile, Maggie had recently taken on multiple jobs and was cutting back on sleep. I worried that she might collapse someday. But John didn't seem concerned and continued his food blogging and social media posts. During one of our occasional video calls, Maggie let slip her true feelings.
I wish he could at least earn a little money.
She looked unusually dejected, her shoulders slumped. That beautiful smile was gone, and her lovely voice sounded faint. John was still out food blogging and rarely home. When I scolded him, he always said,
If I get famous and build connections, it'll pay off in the future.
I listened to his words, doubting they would amount to anything. However, if John could make a living that way, I wanted to support him. Part of me wanted to let John do what he wanted, and I was too lenient. Maggie also seemed to believe in John and couldn't strongly criticize him. Thanks to his efforts, his follower count and likes were slowly increasing. But I soon realized that was a mistake. One day, I was at the diner as usual. The weather forecast predicted a cold, cloudy day with possible snow at night. After lunchtime, there were no customers, so I spent the time preparing for the evening and cleaning the diner. While wiping the tables, my phone rang in my pocket. It was Maggie. I thought it might be another video call, so I answered. But her voice on the other end was very weak.
Diana, I'm sorry. I need to tell you something.
She told me she had collapsed from overwork a few days ago and was hospitalized for a while. Hospitalized. How are you now? Are you okay?
I'm managing somehow.
You should have told me sooner.
I'm sorry. I wanted to, but John said not to worry you.
John?
He said he would take care of our kids himself, but I'm worried about them.
Of course. Is John at home? I couldn't imagine him doing such a thing. But with his wife hospitalized, even John should take care of the kids.
He said he would look after them. I want to believe him, but
Her hesitant tone gave me a bad feeling.
he's posting pictures on social media. I don't think he's watching our kids.
Maggie followed John on social media. And just in case, she decided to check the app. John had been casually posting pictures of hamburgers on the day Maggie was hospitalized and the day after. I listened to Maggie's story in disbelief.
And the restaurant is out of state.
This couldn't wait. I couldn't imagine kids under 10 cooking for themselves without a parent at home. Got it. I'll go to your house now.
I want to come with you.
No, Maggie, you need to rest in the hospital, I said firmly and hung up. If I didn't, she would have insisted on coming along. With doctor's orders, she couldn't leave the hospital. I quickly put up a temporarily closed sign at my diner and headed to my son's apartment. It was about 2 train stops away. Thank goodness I had a spare key for emergencies. I hurriedly unlocked the door and went inside. Mary, Kevin, where are you? The room was pitch dark, and I couldn't see well. I stepped forward and kicked something like a plastic bottle. In the silent room, I took another step. It was chilly inside, and it seemed the heater wasn't on. Mary, Kevin, Grandma's here. As I moved further in, I saw 2 small figures moving in the unlit living room. When I turned on the light, I saw a gaunt Mary shivering in the freezing room. Next to her, Kevin was trembling while eating a banana from Mary's hand. 4 anxious eyes stared at me. Mary, Kevin. Unable to bear it, I hugged them both tightly.
Grandma.
Both Mary and Kevin clung to me and started crying loudly. Their tiny hands gripped my body tightly. I could only imagine how scared and lonely they must have felt. Their mom collapsed and hadn't returned from the hospital, which must have been terrifying. Thinking about their feelings made my heart ache. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner, but everything will be okay now. I turned on the heater and found coats for them until the room warmed up. I boiled water in the kitchen and made hot cocoa. Mary and Kevin drank the cocoa from their mugs, savoring every sip. I hadn't seen John anywhere. Not even his shoes were around. Hoping it was a mistake, I called John. John responded immediately.
Oh, Mom? What's up?
He said with a chuckle. What are you doing?
I'm eating a limited time menu. It's going to be a hit on social media.
Where are you now?
We're on a family trip to Hawaii. We'll be back tomorrow.
I could hear the noise of a bustling place in the background. He was definitely at a tourist spot. But he was alone, not with the family. Even now, he seemed to only think about himself. He couldn't protect Maggie or Mary and Kevin. I knew I had to protect them myself. I tried to remain calm despite my anger boiling inside. I see. Be safe.
Huh? Oh, right. And the souvenirs.
I hung up before he could finish. He had also hidden the fact that Maggie was hospitalized. And he had left the kids alone just to eat a limited time dish. When I asked Mary, it turned out John had lied about going to work.
I knew it. Mom overworked and collapsed, right?
She understood, in her own way, why her mom had collapsed. Even if she didn't know the word overwork, she knew it was from working too hard. How could John not understand what even a child could grasp?
Mom always looked unwell. So I was feeding Kevin something from the fridge.
What about you, Mary? Did you eat anything?
No, I held back.
She shook her head. Her cheeks sunken and far too skinny for an elementary school kid. She must have gone without food for days while her parents were absent.
I haven't been to school. I want to see everyone, but I thought I should wait for Dad to come back.
Mary's eyes welled up again. You've been very brave, Mary. I decided to stay at their apartment that night. I wanted to cook a meal for them, but the fridge was empty. I couldn't make an omelet with just ketchup. Well, we'll have to eat out. What do you two want to eat? They were so hungry they couldn't stop naming dishes. We ended up at a casual diner, eating hamburgers, omelets, and parfaits. Seeing their smiles made me feel relieved. People can't be happy on an empty stomach. I remembered my husband's words. Once we got back home, both kids fell asleep quickly, their tummies full. Watching their peaceful faces, I thought about John. Even the next day, John didn't return. I asked Mary and checked John's social media to see what he was up to. While social media is convenient for sharing information, it also made it easy to track his actions. That day, he posted about eating pizzas at another restaurant. That boy. Just wait. I took 2 kids to visit Maggie in the hospital. Just as I arrived, Maggie was getting ready to check out after being cleared to leave the hospital. Maggie, Mary, and Kevin were thrilled to be reunited at the entrance.
But why are you here?
I can't tolerate what John is doing. You all should come stay with me.
But I can't impose on you.
You're not imposing. It's John who's causing trouble. I'm sorry for his awful behavior. I then whispered a plan to her. Maggie was momentarily surprised, but then decided to take action. John finally returned a week after he said he would. But the house was completely empty.
What's going on?
He even posted about it on social media, treating it as a joke. Minutes after his post, he showed up at my diner.
Hey, Mom. Listen, Maggie and the kids.
He started talking as if he couldn't believe it.
When I got home, nobody was there and everything was gone.
So? It was lunchtime, and the diner was full of regulars. John, looking for sympathy, started sharing his story with them.
I've been working so hard on social media for my family, and my wife and kids just left.
Oh, that's tough. I listened with indifference, but the regulars had a different reaction. I could hear the sound of chairs scraping as people stood up around me. Then, slowly and quietly, they began to close in on John.
Isn't it terrible? Right, everyone?
Still not understanding the situation, John continued to provoke.
You're the guy who calls himself Johnny on social media, right?
Yeah. Are you a fan? Thanks for following me.
Not a chance. You practically forced us to follow you.
What?
Other customers nodded in agreement.
I keep receiving notifications, so I looked at your posts and found that you treat the food poorly.
Did I do that?
Yeah, you played around with free toppings and dismissed food after one bite, saying it was awful.
That was just a joke.
And you neglected your wife and kids while fooling around.
But I was trying to become an influencer to make money for them.
What influencers?
The regular customer blushed red and scolded John. Others joined in, and the diner was filled with shouts of disapproval. I had explained the situation to the regulars before John arrived. Maggie had canceled the apartment lease right after being discharged from the hospital. And now she is living with me along with Mary and Kevin. Because John had neglected his family, focusing only on his social media. Moreover, he was solely focused on increasing his followers and likes on social media. When I told the regulars about everything, they were furious, having seen John's actions online. One regular said, "I'll give him a piece of my mind," and called others to join in. Unaware of all this, John continued posting on social media.
Stop it. It's not my fault. Help me.
Crying, John was pushed out of the diner by the angry regulars.
Never show your face here again.
John was harshly scolded by the regulars and fled, screaming. After that, he disappeared. A few weeks passed. The weather forecast mentioned preparing for pollen as spring approaches. I've been feeling a bit itchy in my nose lately, probably because of that. Maggie, who suffers from hay fever, complained about her nonstop runny nose. I noticed more regulars wearing masks too. Thinking about John, I remembered that he didn't have hay fever, as far as I knew. His whereabouts were unknown. He had been urging his friends to follow him on social media in his quest for fame. But that backfired. Since that day, His social media account had been flooded with negative comments from followers who knew the situation. Of course, his identity was exposed, and he probably won't return to this town. It's karma for disrespecting food. I continued running my diner while living with Maggie and my 2 grandchildren. We recently created a website for the diner, Tomorrow, allowing customers to make reservations via smartphone. Maggie, who works in web design, handled it effortlessly. The website featured our menu and the spirit of the diner inherited from my husband's parents, as well as information about my husband.
I never got to meet John's dad, but through these stories, I feel like I know him.
It's a wonderful website. Thank you, Maggie. Her contributions didn't stop there. She systematized our inventory and sales accounting, making daily bookkeeping much easier. What used to be done by hand is now automatically calculated by entering it into the computer. How convenient. Even I, who struggled with smartphones, quickly got the hang of it. With the ability to handle phone reservations, customer traffic increased. Mary started visiting the diner after school. She even helped answer the phone.
Hello, this is Tomorrow. Yes, you'd like to make a reservation?
Though a bit hesitant, she shook her head when I offered to take over.
The special is, fried chicken. It's seasoned with special spices and fried to a crisp.
Her diligent note-taking while handling calls charmed the regulars. Everyone was enamored by her cuteness. I wondered if she might take over my diner someday, as I continued to manage it day by day.